Hello, everyone. Um, can you hear me correctly? If so, please,
Hello,
if you can
Maria.
raise your hand, will be great. Perfect. I appreciate it. So, thank you so much, everyone, for joining to this training. We are going to talk about the medical device regulations strategies, especially for all the change that are coming up in this 2026. There are several items that in the session of today we are going to discuss. We are going to talk about what happens with the startups, what happens with the scale up, how to move forward in these pathways. First of all, I would like to make a brief introduction, not only to myself. My name is Maria Duine Carrasco. I'm BRC and consultant for AF Pharma. We in AF Pharma we have four offices. Currently, I'm in the Australian ones. Also, we have offices in the US, we have offices in the EU, and we have offices also in the UK. I have been working in regulatory affairs for more than 20 years and especially dedicated for everything that is related mainly to every part of the quality system, the different type of devices, how devices can be managed, and especially for interactions with everything that is related to the FDA, with everything that is related to the registrations, mainly for startups. In the early stage of my career, I have been working for the large pharmaceutical companies. So everything that is related to procedures, how to have it implemented, and so on, was a very good learning. But also, I understand and I completely get what happens with the notified bodies, for example, when they go to audit different companies that are different size with different needs. So one of the important things is that I want that you take is not all the companies are going to have exactly the same quality system, and not all the companies are going to move forward in the same way. Now I would like to introduce to Jaroslav. He's the vice president of biometric at Trialt. Jaroslav, please, if you can introduce yourself, would be great.
Yeah, thank you, Maria. No problem. So, yeah, my name is Yaroslav Sud, and for last 15 years, I'm working with clinical data and clinical trials. Currently, I'm a VP of biometrics at Trialt, which is boutique CRO that offer biometric services. And today, together with Maria, we'll be glad to share our experience in regulations, the most recent change, especially, yeah, along with the professional biometric tips when you are running the trial. And with that, I'll hand it over to Maria.
Thank you so much. Perfect. So our agenda is going to be especially well the welcome and the context. In the part of the content, also, I would like to add some input related, for example, to what is going on in the EU, what is going to happen also in the future. Then we are going to talk about the new FDA requirements. I believe that this is really important because here we are going to focus mainly in the part of the ISO 13485 we had last year a review, but also I want to mention what is going on with the with the 10993, the biocompatibility one, that also suffer one improvement during last year. But this impact is not going to be 100% on the test. It's not going to impact on that. It's going to impact in everything that is the biological evaluation report. So also, I was just going to talk about that very briefly. Then we are going also to talk about the device classification and when trials are required, how is this path correctly. We are going to talk about the clinical trial planning, the statistician, how is everything managed. And also we are going to have the closing. In the closing, we are going to have a short Q&A. So any questions that you want to have in the middle of the training, you can please write it. If there is something more specific that we need more time or something that we need to have further assistance to you, we are going to contact you also after the webinar for you. But anyways, one of the important items here that I would like that you take is that you are not going to have two exactly the same quality system. So if a company comes and told you you are going to have exactly the quality system, exactly that you can just download and use it, that is not going to be the correct way. You need to have a quality system that especially works for you, for your company. It has different items. Of course, that the main steps, let's say, of the 13485 are going to be the same, but the implementation is going to be different, and how the structure of your company also is going to be different. And this is one of the major items that used to happen when we have, I'm also audit, when I'm audit companies and they have a quality system that is brilliant, for example, is very good written, no mistakes, everything is perfect, but then the implementation is not enough. The implementation is a lack of the different point, or for example, there is only one company in one person, sorry, in the company that's for completing the quality system, and that is not something that is viable. That is something that is not correct. Your quality system must be adapted to your company. That is the highlight that I want to first tell you. And then another item that then I would like that you may have is that I strongly recommend to have, for example, regulatory strategies. Regulatory strategies are a very good tool and a needed tool, and these need to be a live document. The regulatory strategy for one time is not going to be the same one after 2 years. It's not going to be the same after 5 years. This is a live document that I recommend to have it. So let's start by the part of why FDA ready is not the same to be slow. This is something that is very typically that companies think about, uh, because to be FDA ready, to have everything in compliance, is time consuming, it's long process, and so on. And the point is, no, this is not the way that happens. If you are starting from the very beginning with the compliance, and if you are starting, for example, with the correct DHF, if you are having the first part of the quality system at the very beginning, you are going to have everything aligned, you are going to have everything very straightforward, and FDA is not going to be slow. Slow games, for example, if you haven't implemented anything, if in the part of the development, for example, for any product, any medical device, or any drug product, you are not registering anything. So in that cases, yes, everything goes slow, honestly. And what happens to be speed? And I like to mention exactly what is the short phrases here, because I believe that they have the power. Um, when we talk about speed and compliance, yes, it's the same. It's not opposite things. Um, let's put an example. When a company is starting, for example, and is in the very first steps, and you already have a quality system that is very basic, but you have a good one. You have a one where you are going to complete, for example, how your device is made, which are all the tests that you made, which are the tests that your device failure on that, and which are the changes implemented to improve it. If you are having that just with a very basic quality system, your DHF is going to be perfect. And then everything that is the next step for compliance is going to be very streamlined, very straightforward, and you are going to be able to directly go and submit to the FDA without taking 5 months, 3 months, neither 2 months in order to prepare, for example, a 15K. Or in the same case, if you want to do both, if you want to go also to the European countries, you are going to have everything very stream and aligned in order to have directly the submissions. Um, one of the situations that is non-speed or going too slow happens is because the delays are related to the regulatory decisions late. When I talk at the very beginning related, for example, the regulatory pathway, there is something that I recommend having in the same moment that you are developing the product. You need to know which is the intent of your product, how is going to be comprehensive this product. You need to know the test that you are going to do and what happens. several times happens that in the part of the development of the product, you figure out that you want to add different features to your product, you want to add different tools, for example, you want to add something else. So these regulatory strategies need to be soft in certain way in order to be updated and to catch all the information that is needed. And yes, you can be in the process to update. The problems came, for example, if you have a regulatory strategy at the very beginning, you are not using it, then you are not using this part of the basic quality system that I mentioned. So you are just making change on the device, you are making different things, and you are not tracking the information. And yes, this is the decision that then aims to make all the process and everything more slow, that you are not going to have all the information, that you need to start writing, for example, a DHF when your product is ready, but telling everything that happened in the past, looking for all the tests, which tests were not the correct ones. So in this case, it's really important to have a solid base. And of course, FDA predictions, expectations, sorry, are predictable. Um, this is also part of the strategy that sometimes we use. For example, when we submit a QSAL, when we submit a question to the FDA, now we need to submit all the information that we have. It's a different kind of pathway, but we are going to know what the FDA is expecting. And sometimes, yes, we can present a first part and then we can submit the second one, but we are going to know exactly what the FDA is asking for the second step. So, talking in this part, for me, is crucial and it's really important to be aligned with FDA expectations. For example, if you are going to submit to the FDA and to the EU, now there is a good news because everything that is related to the quality system, both have it based on the ISO 13485 from this February. So those things are moving forward in the correct way in order to have something that is more harmonized and not with too many changes. So in this first step, I would like to have the key message for you that being FDA ready early also accelerates the scale-up process. If you have everything aligned and you are in compliance with the quality system, then the pathway is very straightforward. It's just presenting the information that you already did in the past during the development of the product.
Could you go to the next slide, Maria?
Oh, yes, please. This is something, thank you, Sharab. This is something that also I would like to talk a little bit that is related to the common myths about the FDA and innovation process. There are several myths about the FDA that honestly they are not correct. They are things that came from many years ago. Especially happens in the EU countries where, for example, we used to have the MDD, the Medical Device Directive, and the FDA was stronger than that with the 510K. Now we have the MDR, and with the MDR, all the expectations and everything changed. And to be honest, FDA is not something that today I will be worried about. FDA is really open to have different information to you, to negotiate. Also, when I'm saying negotiate, is that you can have interactions with the FDA, for example, by submitting the QSAFs, you are going to have all the information. If you don't know exactly the pathway, you can submit a 513 process. There are different steps, and all the information is open. For example, let's say that you want to have a mixer about two devices that today are registered in the FDA. Okay, and if they have a 510K, each of them, if they have this pre-marketing approval, you are going to go directly to take the information. You can compress the information. You are going to know which test do you need to do. And the process is very straightforward. So FDA will not make everything slower. FDA also is willing to help, and especially for startups. And to be 100% honest, related to the fees that notified bodies charge and FDA and the speed up from notified bodies from the EU to the FDA, the timeline is completely different. We are talking about, for example, for not a novel product, a product that is already with intent of use, that is already registered in the FDA. We are talking about between 5 and 6 months to have it on the market. And the good point is, for example, if you don't want to have it on the US market and you want to go to Middle East, you want to go to South America, you're going to go to Asian countries with a 510K registered in the FDA, you can go and register it. And you don't need to sell in the FDA in the US. So that is something that is really good and really important. There are different pathways that we can take with FDA, and it's going to go to place the device in the US, but sometimes it's just an strategy to then register it in other countries. Another important point that I just briefly mentioned at the beginning is that, and it's a myth, we will fix the quality system later. And no, I will not recommend that, because that is going to make everything slow. Have a quality system. You want to have a basic one, go for it. But then we need to add the different steps of the quality system in the moment that your device is getting mature. In this case, it's really linked to the part of the clinical strategy that can wait. And I will say, no, you cannot wait. The clinical strategy is part of the regulatory strategy. You need to know, for example, and let me, then I'm going to talk better or more deep about this. But if we go to the very beginning of the explanation, for the FDA, you need to fit in one of the 3 letters code that the FDA has. Each FDA code has an intent of use. This intent of use is linked to the regulations. And the regulations tell you if you need special controls or not. Every time that we are talking about special controls means that you need to have clinical investigations, clinical studies. You need to do something related to the clinical part into the submission of the 510K. So clinical strategy cannot wait, because this is more time consuming than other steps. So everything that is related to the clinical part is mandatory to have it. And then another myth that is that ISO is only for big companies. And that is a lie, and this is not true. What happens? ISO 13485, you can be certified or you can be in compliance. If you are certified, okay, maybe this is correct, because it's not something that is expensive. It's not cheap to have an ISO certification, but ISO certification is only mandatory for a couple of countries, like, for example, Canada, Brazil, Australia, Japan, and stop there. Not too much countries ask you for the ISO certification from a EU notified body. What happens is that the ISO, you need to have it because you need to have a quality system. This quality system is going to be based on the ISO 13485, but you need to be in compliance with that. All the regulations talks about compliance, not certification. Certification is mainly for the contract manufacturers. And why? Because if you don't manufacture your product 100% as real manufacturer and you use a contract manufacturer, in order to avoid that, for example, the notified body or any, in the case of the EU, no, but any authorities go to audit also your suppliers or your contract manufacturers, you need to ask them to have this certification. And with this certification, you are going to avoid taking more time, taking more money, in order that the authorities go to audit also them. So the ISO certification, I will say that is only for contract manufacturers, but not for manufacturers. So the reality is like, if you take actions related to the planning late, yes, this is going to be part of rework, as we talk, delays, extra cost. Then, for example, everything that is related to the FDA structure is not bureaucracy, it's not more work paper. Today is very clean and very neat. Today, for example, we are going just to have all the information. Let's suppose that you are having the quality system in place, you are having your regulatory strategy, your clinical strategy into the regulatory one, Then for going to the FDA, it's just the process to complete the 510K, for example, and just go to there. You are not going to be requested for extra work. May I ask you for another slide, please? Jaroslav? Oh, perfect. Thank you. So there is something that I would like to go a little bit fast on this item because it's the part of the startups development and commercial readiness. What changed here and how you need to grow, what you need to do, which are the different steps. So basically, the key point is everyone is going to ask when you are ready to submit to the FDA. Everyone wants to have the process validated, the clinical and regulatory strategies ready, the gap assessment, everything on the same time. And here is where you need to take the correct actions. Here is where you need to take the correct decisions. Of course, you are going to have on a startup, you need to do the development. This development need to be aligned. And with that alignment, you can be ready to the commercialization. Here, the key points that we are going to have and everything that we need to go further on this is because we need to know exactly or have an idea about the dates and when we are going to achieve each stage, because this is money consuming and time consuming, of course. And what are the tests that you need to do are the key point here. To have the strategy, this is the key item. This is not difficult. This is not something that may cause any problem. It's just to go very straightforward on the items and to be very neat on it. May I ask you for the next one, please? Perfect. The cost of late regulatory and clinical decisions, yes, those, as I mentioned at the beginning, are huge. Because you are going to have later, for example, the part of the clinical investigations, the part of the clinical data. You need to do remediations. You need to take, for example, more clinical information. You need to have different pathway, and also regulations change. Every time that regulations change, you need to do something extra. So be aligned with the times is a key point, and be aligned with the times is going to be also make you have less cost and less times for everything. Next one, please. So I would like if you can just let me know about this block, which is your currently bigger block. When or what do you think that is the worst part when you go to the FDA? I think that is block, but I'm not sure. If you can do it, this will be great. Perfect. May I ask you for the next one? And one more, please. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, I would like to mention just a little bit the reference of the ISO 13485. What happened during 2025? This was revised. This was reviewed, sorry. There are not going to be changes. Everything that was writing in the 2016 is going to be applicable. The good point is now we are going to have exactly the same for the FDA. So we are going to have exactly the same structure. We are going to have exactly the same rationale. Just for the biocompatibility one, please be aware that the biological evaluation report changed, and this is going to impact in your quality system. This is not new. This is just something that happens and had been a long time published. It's just the reinforcement about, yes, we are going to be working for the same at least until 2030. So you can trust in a quality system until 2030 without any problems. May I ask you for the next one? Perfect. Key items where FDA will look, things that you need to have really, really good. Risk management. Risk management needs to be aligned. There are several templates. We can also provide templates to you. We can help you to complete it. But risk management is the key point. Design control alignment with the risk. Yes, of course, because for controlling the risk, you need to have the correct designs control. Supplier qualification and oversight is what I mentioned before. You need to have the ISO 13485 certification for your suppliers. And of course, validation evidence. You need to do validations. That is mandatory. So, as I mentioned before, FDA is not going to ask for the ISO certificate, it's going to ask for the ISO level behavior. You need to be in compliance with that. And this is the key point. You need to have everything in compliance, and not two companies are going to have the same quality system. May I ask you for one more, please? Perfect. Which are the common gaps? Which are the problems that, in my experience in the last 10 years, I found? First of all, risk management not documented. Risk management is a process. You need to be in compliance all the time with the risk management. No approved supplier list, definitely. That happens a lot and it's not correct. No software validations. Software is a really critical point and several times is not validated and it's a problem. And of course, designs control that are not linked, with the part of the risk. Everything needs to be based on the risk. So FDA is going to, sorry, I have this from the first one. FDA is not going to ask, this is for the part of the ISO, but here the point is that FDA is going to ask you for the part of the risk management. And of course, everything that is DHF related, and DHF will have also the part of the validations and design control. Can I ask you for one more, please? Perfect. Which is the impact on this, on the de novo and the audits? Well, we need to have the pre-subs. With the pre-subs will help you, will give you credibility, will speed up the process. Also, you are going to be ready for any audit and unexpected audit, and you don't need to prepare for that. And of course, FDA is not going to have too much question. You can have just one round of questions, no more than that. But for me here, the critical point is to be ready for any announced audit and not to take time on preparing for it. One more, please. So, practical takeaways. Have the ISO, everything that is risk, have it correctly, have it completed, follow the ISO for risk, validate everything that is important, have it the V and V. It's important to have the validation and the verification, and of course, do not download and copy QMS template. You need to have your own for your company, and that is going to be the core of your company and how it works. One more, please. Okay, perfect. I'm going just to talk briefly about the part of the devices. As you know, we can have 510K, we can have de novo, or we are going to have PMA. We can have also +1 that are exempt, but in that case, it's going to be a little bit different. The difference is, well, for the 510K, you need to have a predicate. This predicate is going to have the same information and intent of use. If you have a different intent of use, you are going to be a de novo, or if it's a class 3, of course, you are going to have a PMA and it's a different pathway. Clinical evidence, yes, is required in every time that you have special controls, or you have a de novo, or you have a PMA. Then, of course, you need to focus on both, on clinical and non-clinical part. And of course, the time and cost are completely different. Here, the key point is to have the correct classification in the 3-letter code from the FDA. There is an open database. You can review it. You can check the information. You can find predicates. You can find similar product to yours. This is really, really important to have it. I will try to focus every time on class 2. Class 2 for me is the best because you can have a de novo. You can have a 510K. I will say 510K if you can is going to be better. And of course, it's not going to be expensive. in comparison with other markets, of course. One more, please. So, when clinical trials are requested? Well, clinical trials, as I just mentioned, are requested when you have a novel technology, you are a de novo, you have a risk profile device, for example, that you are going to have a special controls, new clinical claims that you need to prove, and of course, when you don't have any predicate that is going to be complete de novo 100%. There are certain things that we need to keep in mind is that not all the FDA you need to have a clinical trial, but yes, you need to have the justification of why you don't have it. It's part of the regulatory language. Yes, it's a clinical obligation. Yes, of course. But here, there are some items and some wording that we can change uh, for having a fast pass. But no matter if it's a 510K or it's a de novo, in both cases, at least you need to have the justification of why you are going to have it. And this is part of the regulatory strategy. One more, please. Perfect. I'm here from my side. I'm all set. Jaroslav, I give it to you.
Yes, thank you, Maria, for such a robust presentation. So now let's move on into my favorite field, biometrics and clinical trials. So once you decide on device classification, like Maria just explained, and the need of clinical trials running at all, you might start really to think about the clinical trials planning, or maybe you decided to run it already, or already running. We tried to cover the crucial aspects of biometrics which will help you to be successful doing this. The common error pattern that we see again and again is bringing biostatistician into your clinical trial late after the protocol is being written and approved, sample size estimated, and points are figured out. This case might looks like you already designed a fancy building, determined size, number of floors, engineering staff, and want to be ready for the regulatory earthquake if it comes. But in this scenario, the earthquake will come later and for another reason, simply because you didn't call the data analysis architect, who is biostatistician, to do it for you. And of course, you can imagine how difficult it might be to add another floor, strength of even enlarge the building after everything is already planned and approved. So returning to the clinical trials language, the consequences of late statistician might be truly significant. You may simply not have enough subjects and point selections are far from perfect, and your protocol have to be amended. All these items might cause additional enrollment of subject delays and other unpleasant consequences. But the good news is that it's easy to avoid. Just take it seriously and invite the biostatistician early. When you are developing your regulatory concept, and preferably even before the protocol writing. Yeah, another topic I'd like to cover is statistical programming. So you might have a best study design and SAP in the world, but the team who will implement this plan into reality is statistical programmers, and if they fail with execution, the outcome will be poor. Of course, we need to take into account human nature and chance to do mistakes, but the industry already have an answer to this. Uh, and it's a data issue checks, double programming, review cycles, and other golden industry standards of quality control. In our practice, we saw many cases of the poor quality, and of course, the outcome isn't pleasant. So we did many of rescue studies after the initial CRO is underperforming, and it really becomes nervous for the sponsors when it happens. Yeah, I don't really want even to talk about risks of poor execution, like it may be reworks, rejections, delays, money leaks. But let's rather talk about the key advices in order to avoid such. This would be to pay attention to biostatistician's profile, so you will have a good match. Track record of the stat programming team, insisting on a proper QC process, do a good vendor qualification. And another strong improvement is to bring subject matter expert on the sponsor side. It simply may be a contractor for review cycles. And that will also help you a lot. As you can see here are the main do's and don'ts to apply and to avoid respectively. So you can take your time to acknowledge with this, but as we just discussed, plan properly, because if you fail to plan, you simply planning to fail. And the mm, quality control or on your end, that's also part of responsibility. To summarize, I would say simply do the right things and don't do the wrong ones. Okay, so today we discussed regulatory strategy in 2026 and onwards. Also learned a bit about the importance of biostatistics, statistical programming, and in general improved our awareness about clinical trials and related items. In my opinion, every good product needs to be scaled, and that process is completely natural. Just don't be afraid to investigate, and at the end of the day, regulatory authorities are like partners, and it's always better to be well prepared when you meet them. And to move forward confidently, we need clarity in device classification, strong QMS foundation aligned with ISO and QMSR expectations, well-defined clinical evidence strategy, early statistical leadership, and a structured FDA interaction plan. When these elements are connected early and treated as one strategy, not separate tasks, then the scaling becomes much smoother. Yep. And is that in mind? Thank you for listening so far, and let's move to our second poll and the QA session.
Okay, great. So I'm see that we are having one of the questions. So the first one related to what how does the process change when your intent of use is a novel? Okay. We are planning to submit an existing product that is currently in the EU and has clear EVD. Okay, perfect. So you already have the IVD and you want to move to the US. First of all, for the US, let's say there is a novel intent of use that you are not having. The very first step that you need to do is to request the new FDA code by the process to the FDA. And the FDA will open a new 3 letters FDA code for your intent of use. The first thing that the FDA is going to do is just if you are going to, for example, try to meld or to merge 2 different intent of use and have a new one, is it going to be completely new intent of use? So the first item that the FDA is going to do that. If they can prove that it's not a mixer about two different intent of use that are already used in another code, yes, they are going to grant you a new one. That is the key point, let's say, or the process when your intent of use is known. What I recommend you to do is to maybe then you can contact us, but just to be 100% sure that that intent of use is not two different intent of use that are already used for different products. That is completely new. And with that, yes, I will do that pathway. That is the first to request the FDA code. The second one, I believe that is for users lab.
Maybe I cannot see the question.
The question is how to choose the right statistical programming services.
Oh, well, yeah. Very good question, very. So you can imagine how many CROs we do have in the open world. And some of them are full services, some of them can take care about only clinical part, some of them providing consulting services, some of them are focused strictly on biometrics. So it depends on your needs, as always, but as in every business, you can imagine that there might be tier 1, 2, 3, the most expensive and biggest CROs in the world. And of course, there is an advantage and disadvantages in each of these. So first of all, if you do not have some preferred vendors in mind, people with whom you worked before or who have proven their quality in the past, you need to start to select from the list you have. To do it properly, you might start with the size of CRO. The size matters because of why? Because of big ones will be more bureaucratic, will be slower and expensive. That's not good, and it can be totally fine for you. But their processes are pretty standard. Decision making line is huge, so you may have a delays. So again, upon a need, if you see that some small team which will be completely dedicated to you, pay attention to you, they are flexible, they are experienced, they have experience in therapeutic area that you are trying to run the trial, that might be the perfect match. So pretty lot of items you need to consider, but for sure you have to select a couple of them, talk to them, give them RFP, they will provide you with a proposal, you will estimate it, couple more talks, you will have a rating, and that's it. You can easily decide. But one of the important thing here is to do a proper vendor qualification, not just on a high level, but really look how they are managing quality. Do they have quality management system in place, right SOPs? Are they following these SOPs? And by that vendor qualifications, it's pretty easy to understand in a combination of previous factors whether this CRO will be a good fit for you or not. Hope that I answered the question. Thanks.
Perfect. For the next one, ESC and telemedicine, that will be a class 2 plus a treatment assistant, depending on the kind of treatment assistant. But if the artificial intelligence is going to check and to, let's say, take decisions or suggestions related the cooling ventilator to check the temperature and so on, you're very likely to be a class 2 for the FDA. You can have a predicate, so you can be as a class 2 just directly, let's say, without a de novo, with a 510K path, but you need to integrate the AI rules, let's say, for that, the guidance for that. I would say that yes, you can be a class 2. You are not going to be a PMA class 3. However, here the code is going to be really important, the 3 letters code. I'm just seeing, yeah, the 3 letters code plus the integration of the artificial intelligence. And here you will need to have the special controls with clinical information. In this case, it's going to be mandatory to have it. Okay, we have all the questions completed. Well,
But we
if
still
you
have
have
some
any,
time. Maybe
oh,
somebody else wanted to ask.
sure. Yeah, I have a couple of typical questions that used to happen, and a typical items that is related to the steps, let's say. So many times the main question or the first time for any startup is how to start, which is my first step. The first step is to have honestly a regulatory clinical strategy first, have the intent of use. And this is something that no one is going to provide you. You need to do it. You need to have your intent of use, what you are going to say about your product, what is the information that you are going to provide, also how you want to tell your story about the product. Because you need to keep in mind that for any health authority, your product is what you say your product does. So everything that is related to your product, how you are going to manage it, the intent of use. Of course, if you have a hip implant, it's going to be just a hip implant. You cannot change it. But in certain things, yes, you have certain items where you can manage different information. You can play a little bit on that. And to be honest, for the health authorities, it's really important that you have all the information aligned. Of course, that you have a quality system in order to have a DHF. And part of this DHF is to know what the product is, how you're going to move forward with your product, which are going to be the steps. So you don't need to be afraid about making use up with the FDA, proposing to the FDA different tests, especially for the clinical side. And that would be the key point on how to start. And then the other typical question is, okay, I started not in the correct way. I have things that are not done in the proper way. What can I do now in this moment to avoid more delays? So the point to avoid more delays and to have everything very streamlined is to start by the quality system, start by having the clinical part, start having the base. If you have the base, you can grow very fast and without any issues. We have one more question for you, Sharoslav, related to the programmers needed.
Oh, I see number of programmers. Yeah, so from 0 to infinite, I would say, but really, it depends on your need on project stage. Maybe your initial phase already done by a number of teams, and currently I just need to do a support or review. But talking about clinical trials, and if you are going to do it first time, I would rely on the vendors. So if you have the team on board, that's perfectly fine, no questions with it. But if you're considering some of the CRO, so another vendors who will do it for you, they can definitely estimate the number needed in order to achieve good quality, do a proper QC validation, and be in charge of be in charge of their results, and also meet timelines and all the needs. Typically for phase 1, 2, that might be just 5 experienced programmers and 1 biostatistician, but again, it depends. It depends on therapeutic area and things. For instance, you may have healthy subjects, or you may have an oncology phase 1 with 200 subjects, and that's completely different story. So case by case, I would say, but everything should be selected wisely. If you have vendors, that's their job simply. Thank you. If we do not have questions, may I, Maria, ask you more on device classification? So we really do have 3 levels, and can you please tell a bit more
Yeah.
about cases in your past experience where you really had the doubts, whether it's class 1 or class 2, whether it's class 2 or class 3, something in the middle of this, and how did you decide?
Yeah, so for me, the critical point is the intent of uses. Because when you have a predicate, for example, you need to have exactly the same intent of use as your predicate. But sometimes you want to say something different. Sometimes you want to add some more information. So here the key point and the critical point is to check if another devices are have similar or same intent of use also. So you can merge 2 or 3 FDA codes in order to have your product with the full intent of uses. Um, of course, after this, it's really important to submit a QSAL. It's really important to have all the information for the FDA in order to try to press to have a 510K and not to go to a de novo, mainly because if you go to a de novo or a PMA, I will say that it's more difficult because it's going just to be a class 3 and it's really heavy. But between a de novo, a 510K, or a class 1, I will try to prefer to have a 510K because with a 510K, you are going to have, let's say, the paper, the information that your product can be placed in another markets. So definitely, I will go for that. Then when we have a class 1 or class 2, well, for the FDA, it's very straightforward because it's not risk-based, as happens in the EU, for example. This is more a 3 letters code and intent of use that you need to fit exactly. In the cases where you don't have the proper intent of use, you also can twist a little bit. uh, but I will do that in the very early stages. I will try to do that in order to have exactly the 3 letters code where you can fit in that. But typically, yeah, I will say that that is the critical point to fit in one of the 3 letters code, and that 3 letters code will tell you which classification are you. So it's a little bit tricky, let's say, and especially if you are used to have the pathways of the EU, then in the EU is more risk-based and the 21 rules and that's all. So in this case, you need to check too much information. I know that it's more time consuming, but the best way is to do it at the really early stages in order to be in compliance 100% from the beginning.
And what is the most difficult wording if you submit your device and say that this device is a new one without analogs on the market, that's an implant into the body, so potentially high risk, and what else we can do wrong in order to bring
Yeah.
a lot of unwanted attention from FDA.
So one of the key points that anyways you need to, and this is sorry, this is different to your product, but I just wanted to point also. One of the point that you need to be 100% aware is, for example, let's say that your product is a 15K, you have a predicate, but the regulation changed and now it's asking for special controls. I believe that it's really important to check that if you are going to have a special controls, you are going to be also, or you need to be aligned with the clinical side. The clinical part is really important here for the FDA, and especially nowadays with artificial intelligence software and so on, FDA is asking for more clinical side. Um, but then the wording that you are using, for example, is not the same cure, treat, mitigate. besides everything is a medical device that can cure, treat, or mitigate. The wording that you are going to use for the patient, how you're going to use your device, if it's going to be sterile or not, what you're going to do. Those are critical items that, yes, I strongly recommend to double check and to have to have the information about what you are going to be requested to do before the implementation of any change. Also, if you are several times happens that you start with one intent of use and in the middle of the development you are changing it. So in that cases, I will say yes, it's important to try to keep it or to change it if it's needed. Um, we have also, sorry, one question related. Which are your views on timelines being delayed due to not? Oh, yeah. Timelines. Let's say if you have everything straightforward to go to the market with a 510K, I insist a lot in a 510K because I believe that is the best way to have it. Um, in a normal situation, is between 2 6 months. Sorry, 4 6 months because the FDA takes 30 in to review it. But not having the correct planning, you can have up to 1 year and a half. I also had the one client that he wants 1 year, he went 1 year and a half on the review just for something that should take 4 or 5 months. Because they don't have the information, they submitted. When they called us, they had already submitted and they had the first round of questions. And of course, if you don't have your DHF done according to your quality system, you need to start going back, finding all the tests, all the information. So yes, and to avoid delays is record everything, everything that you are going to do, any test, no matter the results, just record it. Because with that, you are going to have the correct information to submit, and you are going to be very easy to the FDA to understand, and you can explain. And also sometimes the test shouldn't go well. It's not a problem that the test is not good. Uh, because that's the point where you are going to say, okay, I'm going to implement the change control for the design, what I'm going to do, what I'm going to ask. So yes, the timelines can change from 4 or 5 months to 1 year and a half just for not having the correct work paper. And this is also time consuming. And for the FDA, your FDA is not going to charge you more money. But the point is that if the FDA changed the regulation, meanwhile, you are in this process, well, you are going to be impacted for that. And if let's say that they change some regulation and impacts on you and you need to do different testings, well, you need to do it. That's all. You need to do it, and in the other way, if you have everything very straightforward and you comply in 4 months, let's say 6 months, you don't need to do the testing. So that is the point where I believe that is more critical. So as a thought that I just wanted to share is the first thing that I would like to recommend. First of all, of course, if you can have any information, idea, anything related to the intent of use that you want to have, that is the first step. That is the first point. The second one is, yes, accordingly to that, to have the correct clinical regulatory strategy, and have that in a live way. I mean, you need to be flexible. You need to be flexible in order that if you find out there is something not working, you are going to change it, how to improve it, and record everything. Because that should be part of your quality system. And doesn't matter if your quality system is not super complete from the very beginning. It's just to have the correct SOPs at the beginning to track the information, especially for the development sides. So, love some point that you want to just skip for the attendees.
For timelines in general, in business, well, timelines are crucial, but not always you you can meet them. The joke about yes, we can definitely meet the timelines, but we have to move it. Yeah, and on this funny note, I think we are running out of time. already. And so me and Maria would like to thank you for joining us today for these questions. If any services will be needed in the future, our contact details you will see further. And please feel free to ask anything if you will have something in mind after the meeting.
Thank you so much to everyone. And any questions, feel free to send us an email.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good day. Goodbye.
Thank you. Good day.